interview with a Times Square pimp. In 2,000 words, I am going to look into this man's skull.
What's wrong with you, man?
Jonathan Fisher is a reporter with a deadline.
Why is it I can't get anybody to talk to me out here?
Look, I gotta go.
He's about to get a dangerous idea.
This is fantastic. Where'd you get all this stuff?
Easy.
You made it up.
Now he's crossing the line between fact and fiction.
To Tyrone.
And his lie has landed him in the middle of a murder investigation.
Bail is set at $250,000.
Mr. Smalls can make bail.
Make him an expert on you. I want everybody to know he wrote that story about you.
Jonathan Fisher.
Jonathan, right. I will show you the streets, brother.
Jonathan Fisher has a lot to learn.
I take the bread.
Hey, take it easy. Yeah?
Absolutely no one refuses to comply with my subpoenas or withholds evidence from my court. Remove the prisoner.
He thinks he's tough enough.
You're going to write them notes that everybody's been asking for. But in them, you're going to say that on the day that dude bought it, you and I were in Rockaway somewhere having a hot dog.
If you tamper with evidence, if I even think you're tampering with evidence, I'm going to put you so far away you won't even remember what the streets look like.
I'm not going to do that.
I'm going to get you.
But he better wise up fast. Because there's only one way to survive on the streets.
I'll blow your brains out right now.
If I'm dead, you're dead.
Christopher Reeve, Morgan Freeman, Street Smart.
Welcome back to Dave's Movie Diary. Talking about Street Smart from 1987. Wow, gotta love those 80s trailers. Just that music, the 80s synths and guitars, so of its time. This was a really surprising watch for me, for lots of reasons. Particularly the actors, I've got to say, and Christopher Reeve and Morgan Freeman are the main stars of this film. And I was really surprised by their performances, but also the type of roles that they have in this film, based on my experience with both of those guys over a long period of time. So that was interesting, and even the grittiness of the story and how successful it is. So I was very pleasantly surprised by this one. I only put it on because of Morgan Freeman, and I heard it referenced somewhere else. So I thought it was worth a rewatch, and I'm really glad that I did. My relationship with this film is that I saw it. It was reasonably well known in the late 80s when it came out, so I saw it sometime after that, probably before the end of that decade when I was in my late teens. And it didn't stand out for me. I've got no memory of it. I just remember it's a movie about journalism and colliding with the streets, as the title suggests, and that's about it. I do remember that it was unusual for me at that time to see Christopher Reeve in something that wasn't Superman related, because he was so typecast as Superman. It's not funny. Like that effectively ruined his career, I think. So that's all I remembered from it. Like my reaction now is that I totally missed out on something, or I wasn't paying attention, or I was just too young to really appreciate it. And it's a film about taking responsibility for well, I guess being accountable for the decisions you make, and dealing with those consequences, because as this film shows, they can be pretty severe. Try and give you a no spoilers plot if you haven't seen this one, and it's probably likely you haven't. The film centers around the Christopher Reeve character, Jonathan Fisher. He's a struggling New York journalist who's trying to establish himself in a media world where attention is currency, and credibility is your credibility is constantly under pressure. He's definitely not established. He's small time, but he's got a lot of ambition, and he comes up with this idea that could hopefully change his standing within the newsroom. What starts out though as reporting slowly drifts into constructing reality. He shapes details. The narrative becomes refined. Basically, the line between observation and invention starts to blur. He comes up with a story. He creates it. He's not a reporter anymore. He involves himself with the street trade, and specifically with pimps. It's a fleshy, exciting, sexy story, right? It circulates. It gains readers, and it begins to take on a life of its own. And unfortunately, it draws attention to a real life pimp known as Fast Black. This is the Morgan Freeman character. Fast Black exists in the real city. He's out there on the streets. He's doing what he does, pimping, intimidating, making his living. And without turning the film into a procedural crime story, what the film does is it gradually builds this pressure between these two realities, which is the written story and the lived world, which the story is unintentionally touched. And what we also get is a network of people who are trying to deal with the fallout from the story, including the Kathy Bates character, Kathy Baker's character, and she's fantastic. Her Working Girl really grounds the film in something a lot more human and emotionally relatable and immediate. And you can see the real life consequences that her character deals with as a result. So look, what unfolds, I won't tell you what happens in the end. Go and watch it yourself. It's really worth the time. What unfolds is less about crime mechanics and more just about everyday consequences and how quickly you can lose control by making bad decisions. All right, Christopher Reeve, I touched on it earlier. He was globally defined as Superman by 1987. I mean, Superman 4 comes out the same year. He'd been making the Superman franchise movies since 1978. They were a massive success, especially the first two films. Superman 2 came out in 1980. My memories are that it's the most interesting film with Terrence Stamp playing one of the bad guys, separate to Lex Luthor, of course, who's played by Gene Hackman. But I remember Terrence Stamp being particularly nasty in that one. And then it kind of went off the rails with Superman 3 and 4, and it was just a money-making exercise. And no doubt Christopher Reeve was feeling quite inhibited and constrained by those films. He was making films outside of the franchise, much as Harrison Ford continued to do outside of the Star Wars and Indiana Jones universes. But it's chalk and cheese in terms of how successful those two actors made that transition. I don't think anyone ever thought that Christopher Reeve was anything else except Superman. And I think that's a pity because he showed in this film that he's quite a good actor. So his performance surprised me. And he's gets to show a lot of depth in this film. He gets to show quite a wide range of emotions. Not just the acting, though. He does more than just act in this film. I looked into it. He was actually creatively involved in rewriting parts of the script and held the screenplay for a significant period of time before committing to the project. So it really feels like a personal undertaking that he had. It's a film he deliberately chose and helped to shape. And I think he did really well in this role. Of course, I think most of us know that not long after, in the next decade, in 95, he suffered that horse riding accident that left him paralyzed from the neck down. And that's really how people know him, either as that persona or the Superman persona. So I think it's always good to see someone in a more complete redefinition, and Street Smart really does that. Shows that he had quite a good acting range. So well done. But I really want to talk about Morgan Freeman because that's one of the main reasons I watched this. And look, everyone knows Morgan Freeman. He's had this massive career, especially since the 90s, the mid-90s. So he had Shawshank Redemption in 94 and then Seven the year after, and he was off and running, and he's really got that integrity and that respectability, as well as great acting chops and charisma. But he's I think he has actually done the voice of God. He's played the president in one of those disaster films. He became part of the foundations of movie making. Back in 1987, though, he was just another working stiff in terms of acting roles, and he was doing some theatre work, TV supporting roles. Street Smart really changed everything, and it showed you what this guy could do. But what I'm really interested in is the contrast in the roles. So all those roles with, Shawshank Redemption, Red was a career criminal, but he had a heart of gold and a philosopher's bent. And then Seven, the elder statesman. And from then on, Morgan Freeman's destiny was set in terms of his roles. He was $1 Million Baby's another one. He was always the good guy, always the voice of reason, that deep resonant voice, and his calm wisdom. Wisdom's what I think of when I think of Morgan Freeman. This role is incredible. He's playing a pimp. It's not just surface level, though. This guy is a dangerous dude. He's very controlled. He's all about the dollar. He will do anything in terms of violence, in terms of murder, in terms of cutting up his own girls, in terms of... He just treats them like commodities, and I get it. That's what he's there for. But this performance is is intimidating. It is scary. It's frightening. And it's Morgan Freeman. He doesn't just perform this role. He really embodies it. And I was shocked to hear that the role nearly passed him by. Apparently Danny Glover was offered it. Danny Glover of Lethal Weapon fame, who's a great actor in his own right. But luckily for us, he turned it down. And that decision changed the way this film turned out, I think. I don't know that Danny Glover would have been able to imbue the sense of menace and just cutthroat dynamics that Morgan Freeman brought to this role. And of course, it ultimately opened the door to Freeman's breakout. And then we've got another 40 years of great Morgan Freeman performances to look forward to. He was in Glory and Driving Miss Daisy in '89, both big time roles that garnered Oscar attention. And I don't need to tell you about the rest of his career, but what shocked me was not only how good he was in the role, but how scary he was. I don't think anyone's ever done pimp as well as Morgan Freeman, and if you told me that going into this, I would have laughed at you. So that was the main thing I got out of this film. But it's a pretty big thing. They shot it on location in New York. It had a pretty small budget, I understand. So it's got a really grounded, gritty, unpolished realism that really suits the subject matter, and it suits the struggles that the Christopher Reeve character is going through. It luckily did get some awareness of Morgan Freeman. He got nominated for Best Supporting Actor. But also Kathy Baker's performance is a standout. She's so believable in the role. Maybe for me it's because I don't recall her in a lot of other films, although I know she was in a lot of other films, so maybe I can immediately identify with her in this role, and that helps. She's a real anchor for this film. She's a real... Christopher Reeve is too, but he does some pretty outlandish things in the film, some risky things. she's someone that you can relate to a lot more. You can understand why she's in the in this predicament that she's in. I think over time it's quietly got a reputation as a pretty serious late 80s urban drama, and that it turned a couple of careers around. So what I got out of it on the rewatch now is that it's not a melodramatic film. There's not much emphasis on spectacle. It's all about the tensions that's created through the performances and the systems and the power structures that we're investigating. Journalism, power, the consequences of taking risks, and the other things I've noticed, I've already talked about, that Freeman just carries that volatility beneath his cool, calm composure, and it leaps out at times, and it's shocking and jarring. And New York just New York, as it does, just sits in the background. It's indifferent to everything. It's just absorbing, no judgment. It's just the background. It's just the setting where these crazy things happen. So the only things that didn't work for me was that maybe the middle section of the film lost a bit of pressure, a bit of narrative, before it gets back on track. I did feel at times, even though I really liked Christopher Reeve's performance, I felt maybe sometimes he was a little bit too chilled. When you realise his character is going through not just professional criticism and risk, his whole safety and that of his wife, girlfriend, who actually is played by Mimi Rogers, and I'm always glad to see Mimi Rogers in films. I really liked her around that time. I wonder if his kind of lack of intensity at times sort of limits what the film could have the heights that the film could have reached. So the film never really got the cultural weight that the themes suggested. But it is a really solid film, and it's definitely worth a rewatch, or a first-time watch if you haven't seen it before. I wonder if pairing it with a film like Nightcrawler, the Jake Gyllenhaal film from about 10 years ago, would be an interesting watch. Both about journalists trying to crack it and get to the next level of their careers in vastly different ways, vastly different films, of course. But I don't know, you could have a journalism film night. So look, my final thoughts are that Street Smart isn't a great film in the conventional sense, but it's a revealing one. It's a surprising one. If nothing else, for Morgan Freeman's breakout performance and just the unlikely success of him in a role like this. It's a sliding doors moment, like I talked about. Danny Glover nearly got the role. Christopher Reeve made sure the film was made and was a driving force behind the scenes. And that's unlikely to me. I just always thought of him as a fairly wooden Superman. And Kathy Baker coming out of nowhere and really making a career for herself in roles like this. So maybe the film becomes something larger than its story. Some turning points in a few careers there. And I guess in finishing up, maybe sometimes the most interesting films aren't defined by what they say, but by who almost said it instead. Danny Glover. Nothing against Danny, but maybe we're not even talking about this film now. Maybe it didn't even get made. I don't know. It would have come out the same year as Lethal Weapon. That's probably why I turned it down, actually. He probably went off and made Lethal Weapon. Good call for him. All right, there you go. A surprising rewatch for me, and hopefully a one to put on your list if you haven't already seen it. Anyway, thanks for joining me as always, and see you next time.